living by faith as a concept is something that Jesus himself actually talked about, particularly in the second half of Matthew chapter 6. So in this video, I'm going to quickly go through 5 different do's and don'ts of living by faith. Don't assume that God has to use money to feed and clothe you. So even though God can and will at times use money as a way to provide for your food, clothes, and basic material needs, He doesn't have to always use money as a tool to provide. And when we get too attached to any one particular method through which His provision comes, we can actually limit His ability as our ultimate provider. So keep an open mind. Remember, you can't put the spirit inside of a box, and know that God doesn't have to use money to meet your needs. Do something. So many people think that living by faith in God instead of trusting in money and materialism to meet our needs means not doing anything. But in reality, nothing could be farther from the truth. When we're truly living by faith in God and His miraculous provision, we're actually using our time, our energy, our lives to look for ways to serve other people and to show love. So do make sure that you do something to spread the love of Christ as you seek to live by faith. Don't let money influence what you do and how you do it. So even though Jesus did preach freely give and freely receive, it can be tempting at times to decide that we're going to do our giving in areas and location amongst people where we're going to receive the most materially. However, when we're truly living by faith, we don't let money and material rewards determine what we're going to do. Rather, we seek to ask ourselves questions like, where can I make the biggest impact? Where are the greatest needs? Where can I most effectively witness to Christ for others? And we don't allow money and materialism to influence what we do. Do hold loosely to food restrictions. So even though there are a lot of good reasons from a health perspective to maybe eat certain foods and to avoid others, if we're too rigid and restrictive in terms of what we eat, we can actually limit our effectiveness in terms of our ability to relate to other people and experience their love as they share their culture with us. I believe that this is one reason why when Jesus sent His disciples out on outreach, He told them to eat whatever is set before them. And in the 11th chapter of the book of Acts, the Apostle Peter actually received a vision from heaven saying that all foods are now clean. So there's a very important lesson in that for us, and that's simply this. We don't need to put restrictions around ourselves on the basis of what we eat, because it's not what goes into our mouth that makes us unclean. It's actually what comes out. Don't preach at people who are very clearly showing that they don't want to hear the message that you have to bring. You know, Jesus actually said for us not to cast our pearls before swine. And I believe that the words of Christ, the true gospel message, are actually the pearl of great price. So when someone shows very clearly through their actions that they're not interested in the message you have, don't continue to preach to such people. Instead, turn your time and attention to someone who's actually interested in hearing the words of Christ and receiving that message. Do be content with food and clothing. You know, in Matthew chapter 6, when Jesus says that we shouldn't worry about what we're going to eat and what we're going to drink, and tells us to consider the birds and the flowers, He only promises that when we seek first the kingdom of heaven, that our food, clothes, and drink will be provided for. He doesn't promise the fanciest houses. He doesn't promise us luxury vacations. He doesn't promise us the latest iPhone and all these gadgets that are actually luxuries. So in the same way, we need to be content with the simple things like food and clothes, and not expect or presume for God to provide luxuries unless He chooses to. Don't assume that you'll even have a house. Now, this is going to come as a shock to most people, because when we think of Christianity today, we picture lavish living, we picture exotic lifestyles. However, Jesus actually said, at least at one point in the Gospels, that foxes have holes and the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay His head. So while we do know that at times Jesus stayed in people's houses, it also seems from the scriptures that there were times where He simply slept out. In the same way, when we truly count the cost of what it means to be a disciple, and when we truly commit to Christ above anything else in this world, we have to at least face the possibility of going without a home. It doesn't mean it'll be an eternal thing, but unless we're willing to confront that, we have to question, have we truly counted the cost? Do expect persecution. You know, the Apostle Paul actually says in the Bible that all who live godly will suffer persecution. And Jesus says that if they have done, so much in terms of persecuting Him, how much more so will they do to us as His followers? So don't expect that following Christ is actually your ticket to popularity and acceptance in a world that crucified the Son of God. Rather, see following Christ as an actual means to persecution. However, don't despair. Jesus says when they persecute you, rather than getting sad and depressed, rejoice, for great is your reward in heaven. Don't be afraid to ask for help. You know, when Jesus sent his disciples out on outreach, he actually told them to inquire who is worthy in order to stay with him. And Jesus also said that there's no one who gives, someone a reward in the name of a prophet who won't actually receive a prophet's reward themselves. So in a lot of ways, we need to be confident that other people can actually assist us along our journey, and don't let pride stop us from asking for help when another person can help us in that path. Do look out for practical ways to help other people and to show the love of Christ in a practical way that people can see tangibly. You know, when Jesus sent the disciples out on outreach, not only did he tell them to go and preach the gospel, but he actually told them as well to heal the sick. And obviously, we live in a day and age where most people don't have the supernatural gift of healing in a miraculous sense. But however, there are still other things that we can do in order to bring about healing in the lives of others. We could, for example, show practical care. You know, the Bible talks about laying hands on those who are sick so that they may recover. It could be that if you see someone who's really having a bad day, you could just offer them a hug. It could be that if someone is recovering from an injury or sick and in bed, you could simply visit them. There are so many ways that we can practically try to show love and care to those who are sick and to bring healing in a world where it's very much needed. So there you have it, guys. I've just given you 5 do's and don'ts of how to live by faith. Put them into practice yourself. You know, they say hearing is one thing, but actually doing it is a whole nother thing, and that's when it makes it real in our lives. Also, if this video has inspired you in some way, be sure to give it a thumbs up, like it, subscribe to the channel, and remember to keep seeking the kingdom. God bless.